After the fantastic 20th anniversary special, The Five Doctors, Doctor Who carried on, looking ahead to its third decade. Doctor Who's 21st season began airing in January 1984. It was during this season that Peter Davison opted to leave the show, having been advised by Patrick Troughton to only do 3 seasons. So after the long Tom Baker era, the producers were once again looking for a new Doctor. However, the search for the new Doctor was far quicker than anyone may have expected. Colin Baker had previously appeared in Doctor Who in season 20. Colin Baker played Commander Maxwell in Arc of Infinity. Colin Baker's appearance in this story was just over a year before his first appearance as the Sixth Doctor. Colin Baker's first appearance as the Sixth Doctor came in The Twin Dilemma, the final story of season 21. The Twin Dilemma is not regarded as an especially good introduction to the Sixth Doctor. The new Doctor's blunt and rudeness did not chime well with audiences who were used to the far nicer Fifth Doctor. I can see what the writers were going with, but the execution didn't work. As this was also the season finale, it was a while before the Sixth Doctor could be redeemed. Season 22 marked a big change. For the 21 seasons, Doctor Who had been a 25-minute show, but now it had been expanded to 45 minutes. Attack of the Cybermen was the opening story for season 22, and was amongst the first classic Who stories I ever saw. Therefore, I really like Attack of the Cybermen. I think the Sixth Doctor's personality was somewhat toned down here, and he comes across as still the same character as in the last story, but far more likeable. It is at this point of the series where references to past stories reach somewhat absurd levels. Attack of the Cybermen features a plethora of references, a list which is far too long for me to list here. It was also during this season that Doctor Who's enthusiasm for violence became more apparent. Doctor Who had a history of violence being depicted on screen, most notably during the Philip Hinchcliffe era. It was toned down once Graham Williams took over as producer, and after that stage, Doctor Who wasn't as dark or horror-orientated for several years. During the final Peter Davison season, the amount of violence became more obvious. This is especially apparent during his final few stories, such as Resurrection of the Daleks and The Caves of Androzani. The depiction of violence carried over to the Sixth Doctor era, where audiences and the BBC executives found the violence harder to stomach. This, coupled with the at times poor writing for the new Doctor, made Doctor Who no longer appear to be a family show. The Master, as played by Anthony Ayling, returned in The Mark of the Rani, another signal, albeit a minor one, that the show was acknowledging its past. The Master had been a regular adversary during the Davison era, so bringing back Ainley to face off against Colin Baker seemed like a good decision. The Rani, as played by Kate O'Mara, was introduced here, a new Time Lord adversary, but one that didn't have the same impact as the Master. To date, the Rani only has 2 canonical TV appearances, though the character has troubled the Doctor in numerous expanded universe works. Following The Mark of the Rani, Doctor Who took another nostalgic look at its past. After the success of the 20th anniversary special, The Five Doctors, producer John Nathan Turner was keen for another multi-Doctor story, so that's exactly what audiences got in 1985. John Pertwee was allegedly due to return as the Third Doctor, but was unavailable, so Patrick Troughton returned for his final appearance as the Second Doctor. Along with the Second Doctor and Jamie returning, the long-time adversaries, the Sontarans, featured, acting as the central villains for the story. Continuing the central themes of season 22, The Two Doctors is both violent and filled with references to past stories. After 22 seasons, perhaps the excessive callbacks put off younger members of the audience. This was pre-streaming and catch-up, so a lot of these references would have completely fallen flat. It is during The Two Doctors where season 22's pacing issues become more obvious. For 21 seasons, the writers wrote 25-minute episodes, and the transition was clearly bumpy. The Two Doctors is a 3-parter, and would have worked a lot better had it either been a 2-parter or been 4 25-minute parts. There is a lot to like about The Two Doctors. Patrick Troughton is superb, and the Sontarans are fantastic, despite their inconsistent heights. Season 22 ended with Revelation of the Daleks, a genuinely great Dalek story that fitted the tone perfectly, and Colin Baker rounded off his debut season with a brilliant performance. However, after this story, Doctor Who's well-documented 18-month hiatus began. It's no secret that the executives at the BBC wanted to kill Doctor Who. They'd wanted to for years, but there was never really a good excuse. Doctor Who was very popular with Tom Baker, and Peter Davison managed to continue that popularity during his era. The BBC managed to capitalise off the complaints directed at season 22. They used these complaints as their reasoning behind the cancellation. The cancellation was later downgraded to a hiatus due to fan pressure, but in terms of the classic series, Doctor Who would never again be a staple of television. Season 22 is an enjoyable season, but in the context of 1985, it didn't quite land. After the news of the hiatus broke just a few weeks before filming was due to begin, the writing team had to reshape and completely alter their plans for season 23. Instead of being 45 minutes, Doctor Who reverted back to the 25-minute format. However, there would only be 14 episodes, making it the shortest Doctor Who season at the time. Season 23 hugely toned down the violence, and the Sixth Doctor's blunt personality was also toned down to make him more likeable. Season 23 was effectively a 14-part story. It was entitled The Trial of a Time Lord, a knowing nod to the audience as the show was on trial itself at the time. Michael Jaston as the Valeyard was the central villain for the series and was simply superb. The Valeyard was a refreshing change of threat, and this made season 23 all the more engaging. Season 23 is quite plot heavy and focuses on Time Lord culture to an extent, in a different way to season 22. The casual audience may have been alienated. However, by the time season 23 aired, a large chunk of the audience had already gone elsewhere. Season 22 continued a good trend ratings-wise, averaging around 7 million, but after the 18-month hiatus, season 23 averaged around 4 million. For the rest of Classic Who, Doctor Who consistently reached 3 to 4 million viewers, a far cry from just a few years prior. Season 23 is an interesting series, and I would recommend it, though certainly not if you've never seen Classic Who. Season 22 is a great season, and for those who enjoy Doctor Who when it's a bit bonkers, then Season 22 may be the season for you. Colin Baker expressed in an interview a desire to break Tom Baker's record of 7 seasons, and to try and appear in 8. Colin Baker ultimately became the shortest-serving Doctor at the time, only appearing in 2 seasons. Colin Baker was unceremoniously sacked as the Doctor. Colin Baker, understandably, didn't want to appear in his regeneration scene, and so his successor Sylvester McCoy appeared briefly as the Sixth Doctor in a wig, truly a visual representation of Doctor Who's state at the time, if there ever was one, aside from the Sixth Doctor's costume, of course. The Colin Baker era was made at a time when the BBC wanted rid of Doctor Who. The show itself was poorly managed, and this ultimately put off viewers. Many of the decisions had good reasoning behind them, such as making the Doctor a more alien and obnoxious character. Apparently, this was supposed to harken back to when audiences first met the First Doctor, but unfortunately, like many things around the time, the execution didn't work. Colin Baker was brilliant as the Doctor, and it's a shame that his tenure was so short. For many years, this era of Doctor Who was the subject of ridicule and mockery. Doctor Who was then cancelled in 1989, just 3 years after Colin Baker was sacked from the part. In 1999, Colin Baker reprised his role as the Doctor for Big Finish, who produced audio stories. To this day, Colin Baker is still playing that same role for Big Finish, much to the delight of his legion of fans, many of whom didn't even watch his series when it first aired. Big Finish has certainly repaired the Sixth Doctor's image. For many people, the Sixth Doctor is one of the best Doctors because of this. Big Finish gave fans a continuation of the Sixth Doctor's adventures, as this incarnation was never written out properly. In 2015, The Last Adventure was released, giving the Sixth Doctor the regeneration story that had never previously materialised. So, the Sixth Doctor is a great Doctor, with Colin Baker bringing out such a great performance every time. His television episodes may be a mixed bag, but Colin Baker was always in fine form, and Big Finish have opened up this incarnation to a whole new generation of fans.